Dean got out of his Uber and carried his bag up to the lake house. It had been a tough year, with the pandemic and all, and he was looking forward to getting away from his small apartment for a few days to stay at the company lake house. The lake house was a small reward offered to the salesperson of the month to go and visit for a week, enjoy the isolation in the mountains. Dean had worked hard through the year, mostly from boredom, working from home and getting out only when he had to. That said, he was looking forward to spending his isolation in a much more open and robust place, and the mountain air was already calming his senses. He typed the code he had been given earlier to enter the gate, went down to the house, unlocked the door, and let himself in. The house was large, with 5 bedrooms upstairs, access to a floating-style staircase in the center of a spacious living room. Off the living room was a large bar that bordered the kitchen, with the laundry down a short hall. But the real highlight of the space was the enormous windows that looked out over the lake. Going and standing at the crystal-clear portals to the beauty of the Smoky Mountains, he could see the path leading down to the dock, which had a sloop for boats, but there was no boat moored to it. That was fine with him. He loved the view, but growing up in the city, he never felt comfortable on the water. No, he was here to stretch out in this giant house alone after spending most of the year working in his tiny little apartment. He went upstairs, examining each room, trying to decide which one to call home for the next week. Selecting the largest, which included a small study with an assortment of books, he threw his bag beside the bed and lay on the crisp sheets. He was sure a lot of family men were pretty unhappy with him right now, hogging all his space to himself. Being in his early 20s and single, many of the older family men in the company shot him dirty looks in the Zoom call when he was announced the winner of the competition. But he had worked hard for this, and did not care if he made some grumpy men sad, or that their wives were likely angry with their husbands for not working as hard. He grinned to himself, sitting up on the bed. He had worked hard for this, and he was going to enjoy it. Dean tread water, gulping in large amounts as he struggled to get free. Something was pulling him down into the inky darkness. Why was he in the lake? He thought. What's going on? He held his breath for as long as he could, but his lungs burned. He stretched to free himself from the icy grip around his ankle and broke free in one desperate wrench. He swam towards the surface, or so he hoped. The water was pitch black, and he was disoriented, unsure whether he should swim up or down. But he dared not stop, let the icy tendril drag him down again. He felt his lungs would burst, and he realized he would not make it out of the water. Dean woke screaming in his bed under his white sheets, gasping for air. It was the 3rd night since he had arrived in this house, and he had dreamed he was drowning in the lake every single night. The bed sheets were soaked with sweat, and he panted, feeling like he had genuinely been drowning. He looked at the clock by the bed. It was 2 a.m., just like the other 2 nights. He rolled over to the other side and put his feet on the carpet, scrunching his toes, and the expensive soft weave relaxed him. And he rose to his feet and went to the restroom. He washed his hands and his face and looked at himself in the mirror. Dark circles formed under his eyes from lack of sleep, and he felt more tired than he had ever felt at home. His muscles were in agony and his head hurt like a bad hangover. He splashed water on his face again and looked back at his haggard reflection. Not another night here, he thought to himself. To hell with this place. I'm going home. In the darkness, he turned to the room but found himself reluctant to go back to bed. He stepped into the hall and walked down the staircase. The full moon lit up the space through the enormous window. He stepped up to the glass and peered through the darkness at the lake. It looked like a piece of glass with no blemish in the moonlight, reflecting the large moon in the sky so perfectly, the effect was surreal. The mountains in the distance grew even more apparent in the dim light as his eyes adjusted to it. A crack of thunder could be heard in the distance as the storm broke against the far side of the mountain. He saw a streaking flash of lightning above the peaks, which drew his attention away from the lake. He wondered if it might rain the following day before looking back at the large body of water. There were ripples, right at the edge, as if something had crawled up on the bank of the lake. Dean peered closer, wondering what it could be. It was a dark shape, enormous, walking along the bank. He could not tell if it walked on all fours or was hunched over, but it was there, in the distance. He thought to himself, maybe a black bear? He had read in the company brochure that black bears sometimes could be seen in the area. The shape stopped walking and seemed to turn towards the water, but then Dean realized that it had turned towards him. In the moonlight, he could suddenly make out two glowing eyes. It was a strange thing. Dean did not know a lot about animals, but he did know that the eyeshine of predators like cats reflected light, like reflectors on a bicycle. But the moonlight was behind the animal. Those eyes should not be glowing like that, Dean thought. They were bright white, like stars blinking in an inky blackness. They stared directly at him. He dared not look away. He felt like he was playing some awful game from grade school, and if he so much as blinked, he would lose. He stared out at the shape as it stared back at him for what felt like an eternity. His heart was racing, his mouth growing very dry. It started as a tickle that rose from the dryness, and he coughed once. In an instant that he had coughed and closed his eyes, the black shape had crossed the distance from the lake to the house. He was nose to nose with it, if it had a nose, and its vast burning white eyes looked like reflections of his own. Startled, he fell backwards, stumbling to the floor, putting his hands up, ready to defend himself. There was no sound, and the stillness enveloped him in the darkness from before. He risked a peek, and the shape and burning eyes were gone. He rose quickly, fighting his fear back to the glass just in time to see a ripple in the water from the things return. The following day, the Uber pulled into the drive of the huge house and honked. Dean had not slept. Indeed, he had not left the living room even for a moment other than to pack his things. He had stared for hours that night and all morning at the lake, but nothing stirred. Nothing. Birds did not land in the lake, fish did not jump from it, and nothing drank from it. The lake, at least from his window, was empty and devoid of life. Once again a peaceful mirror, but to his relief, now of the morning sun. He sighed, grabbed his bag, and headed for the door. The black figure dragged him towards the water again, its bright, burning eyes illuminating the path forward. Dean struggled, but its icy grip was so tight he thought his ankle might snap off. Its touch was freezing, and his leg burned from the icy grip. He yelled for help, but he knew he was all alone. He struggled with all his might, but it was too strong. It had no more form than the night he first saw it. The figure was the size of a large man, pulling him towards the lake slowly. The lake, he remembered, and struggled even more. The figure paid him no mind and stepped off the bank, dragging him under. He tread water, gulping in large mouths as he struggled to get free. It was pulling him down into the inky blackness again. He held his breath for as long as he could, but his lungs burned. He struggled to free himself from the icy grip around his ankle and broke free in one desperate wrench. The water was pitch black and he was disoriented. He wasn't sure whether to swim up or down, but he dared not stop and let the monster drag him down again. He felt his lungs would burst and he realized he would not make it out of the water. Dean cried deep sobs while sitting on the corner of his bed in the apartment. He had not cried like this since he was a little boy. He thought of his mother racing to his bedside in the night to comfort him when he was having a nightmare. That apartment was bigger than this one, and his mother worked long, hard hours to pay the rent, but she always had the time to take care of him. He looked at her picture next to the bed. He wished he could call her now. He rubbed his hands over his face, looking again at the clock. It was just after 2 a.m., but he already knew that. It had been 2 weeks since he left the lake house, but every time he lay in the bed or fell asleep on the couch, he would wake from the same dream. He walked to the window and looked out into the night, across the city. It was full of lights, even at night. but he was strangely drawn to a new set of bright white lights on the roof across from his apartment. He froze. His breath would not come, and in the stillness, he swore his heart stopped. 2 lit, flaming eyes stared at him from across the rooftop. He blinked. They were gone. Dean rode in the back seat of the Uber, wondering if he was truly crazy. All his friends and coworkers thought he was. Dean had told only one living soul of the monster that haunted him. Still, the cracks from his paranoia and lack of sleep had affected every aspect of his life so drastically that he did not even feel like the same person who visited the lake house 2 months ago. Every night Dean slept, he woke from the same dream. He had even begun to see the glowing eyes in broad daylight, at the market, at home, everywhere he went. His boss, noticing his state even over a Zoom call, recommended the company therapist, Dr. Sarah, to him. In confidence, he had told her everything, and she had done her best to help him. Since then, he had tried medication, visits to medical professionals, brain scans. She had recommended he take a leave, and his boss promised to hold his position until he returned. He had some savings, thank God, but it could not go on forever. Finally, Sarah recommended that he face the fear head on. They had gotten permission, and they returned to the lake house together. Sarah had taken a particular interest in his case. She had told him that she wanted to help him chase away these demons. Dean was grateful that she was with him. He would not face the monster alone this time. Dean and Sarah exited the Uber, carrying their bags to the lake house. It had been a tough couple of months, but Dean was hopeful that just a night in the lake house would help him somehow. This time, he was not alone. Either Dr. Sarah would see that he was not crazy, or hopefully the dreams would just stop. Not that Dr. Sarah ever called him crazy, mind you, but she was sure there was a logical explanation for what was happening to him. He shuddered, seeing the lake behind the house, but she reassuringly placed a hand on his shoulder, and the two of them typed the code in and walked up to the house. As he stood in the living room once again, he reflected on how the dreams had recently changed some. Changed to reflect his slow fade into madness. The last time he'd had the vision, he had not fought the monster. He just submitted to being dragged into the lake. Sarah woke screaming from the terrible nightmare. Something icy cold dragging her into the pitch-black body of water. She shivered from the shock of it, how visceral and real it felt. Her lungs still burning from holding her breath, and she felt she could hardly breathe even now. She thought about Dean. The last time she had seen him, he was downstairs sitting on the couch, staring at the lake. She had gone to bed, assuring him that if he needed her, she was only a call away. But considering the eerily similar dream she had just experienced, Sarah wondered if it was wise that he was alone. She threw on her robe and descended the stairs, but even as she went down, she could feel a chill in the air and noticed the couch was empty. Sarah searched for the source of the draft, and to her disbelief, the door to the house leading down to the lake was open. She stepped cautiously onto the terrace and peered at the water. The lake reflected the full moon like it was made of glass. Her eyes adjusted to the light better. She saw a dark figure dragging something along behind it, stooped down low. It stopped at the water's edge and turned slowly. Its eyes lit like white-hot fire. Her heart stopped as she remembered Dean's dreams. The figure turned back to the lake, and she watched as it dragged something into the water behind it.